Welcome to the Unfettered Speech Podcast. I'm Patrick Sullivan.
And I'm Leonard Goodman.
Leonard, good to see you. Happy New Year. It's our first broadcast of the new year.
That's right. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah, that's great. And as always, we're always thrilled to have our guests, and this one is another great special guest. Did you want to introduce him, Leonard?
Yes, Gabe Shipton is the brother. I don't know if you say brother or half brother of Julian Assange. He is, in his own right, an accomplished film producer, activist, and we're really pleased to have you.
Welcome, Gabe.
Yeah, good to be with you both.
So, Gabe, I believe it's one of your most recent projects in film, and I learned a little bit about you that you have quite a career working on films and media. But the most recent one I just watched, and that was called Ithaka, and it's about your brother, basically the fight to free Julian Assange, and it's a wonderful film. I recommend it highly. I guess my first question is: it seems from watching that film that you were basically going about your life in Melbourne when Julian Assange got forcibly arrested from the Ecuadorian embassy and thrown into Belmarsh prison, which sounds like a hellhole in London. And you were basically called into action to help your brother and spent the next, 5 years working for Julian's freedom along with your father, John. Is that accurate description of what happened to you in your life?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Leonard. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I spent almost 15 years sort of carving out a career for myself in the film industry, working on big budget Hollywood projects as well as Australian TV and some other sort of indie films. And so, yeah, that was my ambition and dream, was to sort of become a film producer in that world. And even when Julian was inside the Ecuadorian embassy, because he did spend 7 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy, where he sought refuge after WikiLeaks published the leaks related to that Chelsea Manning whistleblower leaked. Those leaks relating to the Iraq war logs, Afghanistan war diaries, the State Department cable set. And he went into the Ecuadorian embassy around that time, around 7 years ago. And even during that time, I wasn't involved. I would go and see him in the embassy whenever I was in London, probably once a year or once every couple of years over that period. And he seemed to, even though he was, his liberty was constricted, he seemed to be doing pretty well. The embassy, they were continuing to publish, and WikiLeaks was continuing to publish, and Julian seemed, in pretty good health over that period. So, I didn't feel. I felt like I could go on with my life, and I didn't need to help my brother in that way, that he had his own self sorted and could get on with his life. But it was in 2017 when I went to see him in the embassy, and that was just after the first Trump administration had come into power. Mike Pompeo, who was then CIA director, essentially declared a fatwa on Julian and WikiLeaks in his first speech as CIA director. And it was that time, visiting Julian in the embassy, that you really started to see things declining. Julian's health was declining, but also they weren't letting any people into the embassy. His internet connection had been cut off. He'd been cut off from the rest of the world inside the embassy. Things like the security firm that were supposed to be keeping Julian safe had been co-opted by the CIA and had started to spy on him and be very aggressive towards him and visitors. They would take our passports when we went inside the embassy, our passports and phones. And we later found out that the security company was actually opening up our phones, taking photos, and taking photos of our passports and sending them back to the CIA.
Huh.
And so around that
And
time,
and if I'm not mistaken, they were also recording conversations with his lawyers. Is that true?
his lawyers, his doctors, they actually installed high definition cameras all throughout the embassy, uh, and so that they could have these high definition recordings that did have sound. And we used to go in and see Julian, and we all thought Julian was a little bit paranoid, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and he used to put on a white noise jammer when we're in the meeting room, and so that this white noise jammer that would make a shh constant noise in the background when we would go and visit him. And at the time, I thought, oh, Julian's a bit. I wasn't really in that world. As I said, I was, working on these Hollywood productions and uh, doing my own thing. And I just thought, oh God, Julian's, he's a bit paranoid now. But it turns out that, in fact, his meetings with his lawyers, doctors, anyone who came to meet him were all being recorded and sent back to the United States every 15 days. And so it was around that time that I, started to see, I guess, my brother, um, his health declining and things becoming very, very hard for him and for WikiLeaks. But I kept on with doing what I was doing. I was producing a film in Lebanon at the time, and and then 2 years later, in 2019, he was taken from the embassy. He was arrested from the embassy, and that I was producing a film in Lebanon at that time, a psychological thriller about a young girl living there, and I flew into London to go and visit Julian in the prison, and I went with my father and filmmaker and journalist John Pilger, who actually was a bit of a mentor of mine. He passed away last year.
Right.
And I went to see Julian in the prison, and it was seeing him there inside Belmarsh that day that really activated me to join that fight. I'd never seen him in all the years that he was under house arrest or inside the Ecuadorian embassy. I'd never seen him in a state um, like that when I saw him inside Belmarsh prison. And it was that visit that really activated me to do everything I can, because the way I saw it, I had to save my brother's life. I left the prison that day thinking I might never see him again, and I had to do something. And so that launched me on this path of activism, launched me on this idea to make Ithaka, that film you were speaking about earlier, which was really an effort. We identified early on that Julian had really been dehumanized in the media. There was a very, very concerted effort by the mainstream media to vilify Julian, to dehumanize him, so that the public wouldn't stand up for him. They would think that, oh, he's a dirty person who's affiliated with all these seedy characters, and that was a concerted effort inside the media. So early on, we identified we had to unwind that. We had to unwind that dehumanization, and part of that was making our own content, making our own films, doing books, doing plays, all these sorts of cultural touch points that we could do ourselves to change the narrative around Julian. And that was Ithaka. It was telling the story in a way that anyone could approach it. A father, a wife, fighting for their husband, fighting for their son, just as we would imagine that we would do for our children. We wanted people to put themselves in my dad's shoes, in John's shoes, and follow him on his journey of fighting to free his son. And by taking the audience on that journey, we also told them the real story behind WikiLeaks and behind why Julian was imprisoned. And it was, I guess, that was my first step into this world, trying to use my filmmaking skills to sort of change the narrative. And then as we went from there and the campaign built and built momentum, I started, doing lobbying over in Washington, also in Europe. I created a very, very large subscriber group through the Assange campaign, a not-for-profit here in Australia, and really just taking this idea of elevating grassroots activism into a parliament, and then creating political change through grassroots activism, and it was it was successful. We had a great success in freeing Julian, which is a little bit, I think, a year and 6 months ago now. It's Julian's second Christmas back in Australia, and so yeah, it was an incredible journey, Leonard. With thank God that we were successful
Yeah.
in getting Julian out, and we're not talking about him being over in the Eastern District of Virginia at the moment. So yeah, it was an incredible journey, and now I'm sort of grown from there, and I founded my own foundation called the Information Rights Project, that we hope to continue the work that we did for Julian for other whistleblowers, and I've continued on filmmaking, and now I'm not. All my films now have a political bent. I'm no longer in the doing pursuing this Hollywood feature film and drama series world, and I'm much more firmly rooted in the political world now. So that was my activation politically. Yeah.
It's an amazing story. And, I think one of the things, Gabe, when I would talk to friends even 2 years ago, or even maybe now, some of them, but, Julian had been so vilified in our press and elsewhere. And I think there was this, fake connection between somehow he was responsible for either Hillary Clinton's loss, or, that he was connected to Russians, and those two things maybe together, maybe who knows, but among my liberal friends, he went from being a hero to a villain quite quickly, and I think your campaign turned that around enough, at least, to make to get some momentum, and it's an amazing feat that you did. We can talk about Julian, I'm sure, for hours if we wanted to, but really, if you think about that, and then your inspiration to work on grassroots organizing, because one of the things we talk about on Unfettered Speech a lot is we highlight issues of either where free speech is being suppressed, or where democracy isn't living up to its potential because of corruption and these sorts of issues. And you can come away from that feeling very frustrated and powerless, right? That you see all these dark things happening, and what can you do about it, really? So maybe you can talk to that. I mean, I just want to highlight one thing before you go there, which is you didn't mention that Mike Pompeo had a plan to assassinate your brother at one point.
That's
I mean,
right.
that's how dark and low it was. And at some point, because I think of the grassroots that you built around it, that wouldn't have been possible anymore. So how do you think about that? What do you? There's all kinds of dark forces in the world now. Can you talk about your new not-for-profit and what you're doing there?
Yeah. So the Information Rights Project, what we want whistleblowers or journalists who are speaking out to know is that when they make this courageous decision, like Julian did, to publish or to leak information, that there is an organization out there that has their back, that can give them the support that they need, not just uh, this sort of grassroots support, but our or as Julian's family, what we personally learnt was needed to support the person who is in prison or the person who is suffering, and that's support for their family. Because with Julian's case, it was his family that were some of his biggest advocates. So it's engaging with these whistleblowers, these journalists' families, teaching them media skills. Also, we're able to support them financially because often they have to take time out from their jobs. And it's that grassroots network as well. So we've got we've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers who are all activated on these issues, and they all want to know about other people, other whistleblowers who are suffering, and how they can help. And so we activate that network either to create political pressure, but also to support these people who are fighting on the front lines for the freedom of these people. But ultimately, the idea is if we can support whistleblowers and journalists who are facing this kind of persecution and give them some comfort, right? Like, because it's such a hard decision that they make, and it's so courageous that they risk everything. They put everything on the line to bring us information. And if we can give them some comfort that they know that there is an organization out there that will support them when the powerful come after them for exposing this information, we hope that there will be more people willing to do this sort of work and bring us the information that can actually change people's lives. So it's sort of we are continuing the WikiLeaks model in a way. WikiLeaks, they built this awesome leaking machine, right, that would protect journalists, that would be unstoppable in terms of its publishing power, that it would use encryption and the architecture of the internet to have anonymous leaking, to protect whistleblowers and encourage leaking. With the Information Rights Project, we're doing it in a little bit of a different way through what we learned in supporting Julian while he was in prison. And it's really focused on supporting those courageous individuals who make that very, very incredible decision to put everything on the line to expose wrongdoing. And just to speak to, maybe I speak to a little bit about what we did to sort of spread this message and encourage people to act and really make them feel powerful, make people feel powerful, right? Because we do have the power. At the end of the day, like, we are living in a democracy. The power is with the people, and there is a huge effort to convince us that we don't actually have power. But I think you can see in the way that our governments are reacting, the way that they're actually so scared of us, right? Like, they're making all these laws, anti-protest laws, and cutting down on speech. They're making all these laws because we are effective, because they don't want us to know the truth, because we actually do have power, and we have that power to act and make change. And so I think getting to people and convincing them of that or explaining that to them was such an important part of our campaign. And particularly what we found was face-to-face events. That was really part of what changed the momentum in Julian's case on the grassroots level. We across the United States, and we used Ithaka to do that, right? Like, we did 60 plus grassroots screenings across the United States, from Nebraska all the way down to Arizona. We traveled around the whole country doing these grassroots screenings and getting people in a room all together, then watching a film, and then us explaining what they could do and how they could, and empowering them. And it's that getting people inside a room all together, all talking together, making those personal connections, those interpersonal connections, and creating these networks. I found to be very, very important and influential in Julian's cause. And everywhere we went, there were groups, Assange groups forming, and people would get together. They'd come up with their own initiatives, as well as contacting us saying, what can we do next? And it was really powerful to see that people reclaiming, the power that they didn't think they had, just by going there and connecting with them, and telling them our personal story and touching their hearts through the Ithaka, the film, and then explaining what they could do to make a change.
Yeah. It's a powerful film. I mean, there's the sort of the human story of your family and the fight to free your brother, but then there's also this larger issue throughout the film of people just what is going to be left of journalism if they can put someone in prison and torture them. Basically, is what they did to Julian for publishing information about crimes that our government has committed, or not just our government, but other governments throughout the earth committed. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is that they think Julian was just focused on the United States, but that's not true. He was publishing misdeeds of governments all over. And, I guess maybe you could just you kind of answered this as to why. We've obviously had whistleblowers throughout history. Ellsberg is one of the most famous ones, and his information was published in I believe the Washington Post, and read into the halls of Congress, into the record of Congress, the Pentagon Papers. But maybe you could just say, and I guess you kind of answered this as to why they hated Julian so much, because of how brilliant he was and the innovations that he brought to the whistleblower game, and to give protection and anonymity to whistleblowers. But maybe you could is there anything more you could explain as to why? I mean, as Pat mentioned, not only were they spying on him, listening to his conversations with his lawyers, but also trying to kill him. There was a plot afoot to assassinate Julian Assange, and there's also I'm sorry, I'm sort of rambling here, but there also was it wouldn't have been possible except for the change in government in Ecuador, if I'm not mistaken about that. That there was that. So and I don't know how much the United States was involved in that. Probably was, in the regime change in Ecuador. So anyway, maybe you could take that where you will, but why was he such a threat, as opposed to all these other whistleblowers and publishers that have published the work of whistleblowers throughout history?
Well, Julian was very much an outsider, so he was not part of the establishment. He wasn't part of this sort of media or journalist establishment. He very much came from the outside. He was a technologist, and he developed he developed this technology through WikiLeaks that had these special attributes to it. They used the architecture of the internet, as well as this sort of jurisdictional arbitrage, to have something that was unstoppable. It could not be taken down from the internet. So anybody around the world could see what was being published. There was no court order or judge that could take anything down. There was no licenses that could be revoked against WikiLeaks. So it was a real conundrum for these governments. There was no way that they could control or stop WikiLeaks from publishing anything. And if you're a government, or if you're someone inside the government or in the CIA who's desperate to keep secrets, or desperate to cover up your own crimes, that is very, very concerning. And that's why they were trying to figure out how they could stop WikiLeaks for many, many years. And part of it was the only way they could really find to do it was to go after Julian himself, because WikiLeaks couldn't be taken down from the internet. It's still up today, right? But the only thing that they could do was go after Julian. And Julian was the lightning rod, if you will. There are many people behind WikiLeaks, many people who work in the background on WikiLeaks, as well as editor-in-chief Kristen Harrison, etc. But Julian was really the lightning rod there. He took the brunt of this effort to shut down WikiLeaks. And particularly in 2017, I think this is probably one of the best examples as to why WikiLeaks and Julian was so harshly treated, was the Vault 7 leaks. And the Vault 7 leaks relate to the biggest leak in CIA history. And what it was this leak of information that showed the hacking tools that the CIA was using at the time. And these were hacking tools that could hack into your phone, could turn your TV into a listening device. There was even a tool that could control your vehicle by turning it off. And no one knew that the CIA had these tools at the time. And WikiLeaks exposed that. But not only did they expose the existence of these tools, they exposed that the CIA had actually lost control of these tools. These tools that they had developed were now out in the wild, so to speak. And from an intelligence perspective, or if you're in one of these intelligence institutions and you've developed this tool that can hack into anyone's phone or hack into anyone's computer, and all of a sudden it's in the hands of the bad guy, that is incredibly embarrassing. And that's what WikiLeaks did. They embarrassed the CIA. They embarrassed the intelligence services, and
And Mike
that was
Pompeo.
and Mike Pompeo, who was head of the CIA at the time.
Yeah.
And they were incredibly embarrassed, and and they should be. They should be ashamed that they let these hacking tools out in the wild and didn't admit it. Right, like they didn't tell anybody that patches needed to be done. They knew they were out there, and they didn't say anything because they didn't want to embarrass themselves. And WikiLeaks was able to put that information out, and the patches were then made, right? Like Apple made the patches, like Samsung made these patches. Everybody that was then able to go back and patch their phones and devices because of these revelations that WikiLeaks made. But it exposed CIA incompetence, and they fought back because they don't like being exposed for their incompetence. And so that's when Mike Pompeo declared WikiLeaks as what he called at the time a non-state hostile intelligence agency. And what that actually meant was the CIA could use clandestine operations against WikiLeaks, similarly with what they'd use, say, against the Iranian Secret Service or the Russian secret services. They could then use these sorts of operations without congressional oversight against a publishing institution or a publishing site like WikiLeaks. And it was after that we saw these, a specific CIA team set up to pursue WikiLeaks, and as you say, there was plans to kidnap Julian from the embassy, even plans to murder him inside the embassy. And the plans to kidnap him are reported to have made it all the way to the White House, to the Trump administration. And it was at that time that there was a meeting with the DOJ. This is reported in Yahoo News in a great article. I could suggest anybody who wants to go and read about it should read this Yahoo News article about these shenanigans that were going on inside the Trump administration at the time. And it was the CIA saying, "Oh, we could kidnap him," and the DOJ actually responded, say, "Hey, let's wait till we get some charges in place, and then we can get him out of the embassy." And so, as you mentioned, Leonard, it was at that time that we saw Mike Pence visit Ecuador, right? And it was the first time a vice president has ever visited Ecuador, this country of 3 million people in Latin America. We saw Mike Pence travel there. We saw offers from the IMF to Ecuador, $6 billion loan from the IMF. There's a new military base in Ecuador. With the change in government in Ecuador also happened around that time, and that was necessary in order to get Julian out of the embassy, and that's when that process really started to kick off. Was in 2017 after those Vault 7 leaks, after the CIA was incredibly embarrassed. They began to put more resources into getting Julian out of the embassy, and that's when we saw those dominoes start falling, like the change in government in Ecuador, the unprecedented Espionage Act indictment of a publisher come down through the DOJ. Uh, those dominoes started all from 2017.
So in 2017, all that was happening. By the end, I believe, of Trump's term in 2020, there was talk, wasn't there, of pardoning Julian within the same Trump administration that was trying to murder him at the same time. If I'm not mistaken, right, that was 2020 when that talk happened. And one of the catalysts for that was independent media and independent voices. And I'm thinking particularly of people like Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, who came out strongly for Julian, Pam Anderson for that matter, who came out strongly for Julian Assange, and therefore sort of swayed public opinion in that sector of politics, and he wasn't so anathema anymore, right? Isn't that what happened? And I mean, I want to follow up on that and talk about independent media and its influence. But is that true that that's how that came about?
Yeah, there was a huge push for Julian to be pardoned under the first Trump administration, and we heard a lot of things that it was very, very close, right? Like that the pardon was on Trump's desk. He wanted to sign it, but he couldn't because Mitch McConnell was threatening him in the Senate, and all these different sort of things at play there. But yeah, it was through this huge push from journalists, from a lot of journalists. Tucker Carlson, he wasn't quite independent back then; he was still at Fox News, but he was pushing very hard, having people like Pamela Anderson on his show, Dave Smith, to really advocate for a pardon for Julian, and it was you know, the independent media was really responsible for changing the narrative around Julian's case as well. It wasn't just films like Ithaka, but really concerted effort from people like Jimmy Dore, like Dave Smith, Judge Napolitano, like all these players, this sort of vast expanse of independent media were all on Julian's side. I don't think there was one who wasn't, because they could see how it really affected them, how the pursuit of Julian really affected, you know, their rights to speak out and do their jobs. And so it was a big push from them. And I think everybody acting in unison and in one voice was incredibly powerful from the independent media. And a lot of them I call friends now. I mean, if you're a journalist, you're not supposed to have any friends, I don't think. But um, I'm friends with a lot of these independent media men and women now, and yeah, we want to support them through this. When they get into trouble, if they get stuck, we want to use our networks and what we learned from freeing Julian to support them.
Well, thanks for mentioning the judge and Jimmy, because obviously those were two very strong voices for Julian that helped out a lot. But so here, if we just step back from Julian's case and you look at what's happening, let's say in Europe, let's start there. I want to end in Australia where you are, um, but what's happening in Europe and even in the U.S., you've got this corporate press, which, you were talking about embarrassing the CIA. They're not going to even publish a story, right? If it's embarrassing the CIA, it's just not even going to show up. So you don't have to worry about them. And now you have you have a corporate press which is very hostile to truth or independent voice of any kind. And now you have these governments which are hugely hostile to truth. You have sanctioning of people like Colonel Jacques Beau and a journalist in Germany, Hussein I'm not sure I have his last name right, Doguru. Um, what do you think's happening there? Why are these governments becoming so hysterical about people just saying things?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is because of independent media and the internet, and this sort of flourishing of independent media that happened after WikiLeaks sort of made its historical leaks. That the control of the narrative has been lost by these powerful individuals and governments, and so what's left in their arsenal now to control people is force, and that's the only way that they can do it anymore. The prowess of establishment media, of mainstream media, has fallen to a level where a lot of people aren't even reading it. They don't trust it. They know it's represents vested interest, represents uh, these sort of sectors of society that don't have their interests at heart, and they are able now to go and find information on the internet and educate themselves uh, in a way that wasn't possible before. And I think the people who control the levers of power are very afraid of that. And so what they're doing is they're using what's at their disposal in order to control that. And those are the institutions like the European Parliament, or in Julian's case, it was the Department of Justice and the CIA. These institutions are being used uh, in a more blatant in a more blatant way, because that is the only way that is left to be able to control the narrative, because of this flourishing of independent journalism and the internet. And I think that's really sad, because it just shows uh, this sort of weakness or lack of confidence in our societies. A confident, a strong society should not be afraid of ideas. We should be able to engage with ideas. We should have robust discussions around them. It should be best idea wins, rather than you are going to follow these rules because we say they are the right way. And so I think it's really a sign that our Western societies are 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 in decline. They've lost their confidence. They can't stand on their own anymore, and they're using these tools to try and preserve uh, what's left of the power that they have. And it becomes so obvious to us now. This sort of outward power. Uh, it's obvious to us what's going on, and I think you can just see by the amount of journalists that were killed in the past 2 years, that this is the only way that the narrative can be controlled now,
Yeah.
is through actually killing people who are bringing us the truth. And I find it very, very, very sad, but it's also very illuminating, and shows us where we are doing well, and how powerful independent journalism and the media and the internet actually is at um, going against these narratives from the powerful.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about how Julian is doing now? Obviously, he was tortured horribly for years in the Belmarsh prison, and before that, like you say, I mean, his last couple years in the embassy were really troubling. There's one there's one part of the film where you show him skateboarding in that little room in the embassy. I was curious about that. He's skateboarding back and forth in a tiny little room, almost manically. Was that from the CIA leak? That
Yes,
So you ended up getting some of that footage of their surveillance footage.
yes, that's right. So there was some people who worked for the security company actually came forward and leaked the information that they had been collecting.
Hmm,
So that's how part of the reason we know that this was going on. It was because these people on the inside, saw what was going on, and decided to leak that information.
I see.
And there's actually a court case in Spain. They summoned Mike Pompeo, and Mike Pompeo can't actually travel to Spain anymore, but for fear of arrest, right? Because there's a judicial investigation ongoing in Spain about this issue, because there was a Spanish company that was doing the security inside the embassy, and so all this information, all this camera footage, all these photos of people's passports, and inside of their phones has all been leaked. And so, yeah, there's a vast trove of footage out there of what went on inside the embassy, and has been used in Ithaca and other films as well. There's another film called $6 Billion Man, which I think is due for release in the United States soon, and that has a lot of this footage inside it, as well as a really compelling account of how this information actually came out. So I suggest everyone go and catch that when it's available. $6 Billion Man. It's a very compelling film too. More about, it's less of a personal film than Ithaca, but more about what went on inside the embassy, and the lengths that the United States government went to silencing Julian. And interesting that, Leonard, that skateboard that Julian was riding was a gift from Matt. I think it's Matt Groening, from the creator of The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Julian, when he first started leaking this information, was an incredibly popular character, right? And he had a cameo on The Simpsons,
That's
and
right.
they gifted him
Yeah.
this skateboard.
Arts,
So, and
arts,
that was the
arts
skateboard.
skateboard.
Yeah, and that was the skateboard that he was riding around inside the embassy. So,
Can
uh,
you can you give us an update on Julian? How is he doing? I mean, one of the heartbreaking things in the film is, he has these two little kids that can't see their dad or can only talk to him sometimes on the phone, and um, now he's reunited with his family. How um, is there healing? How is the healing
yeah,
process going?
yeah, lots of hearing. And I'm going to go. I'm going to see him on Friday, so I'll travel up to where he lives. He lives quite a bit of a drive from where I live in Australia. It's a big country, but yeah, he's doing very well. Reconnected with his family. Uh, they're living, I think, quite a sort of a normal life, as much of a normal life as he could hope for, and he's getting so much better. I mean, it was hard to describe when he first got out. It's like he's been living on the run for 14 years, having to look over his shoulder, having to do, all these different things to keep himself alive for the last 14 years. And I think anyone can understand, for the mind to unlearn all that, and adjust to what is a normal life, is an incredibly difficult task. And I think there will be scars that will definitely stay with him. But he's in a pretty good place now, and he's able to. I think he gets a lot out of connecting with nature, and being out in the Australian bush, in the Australian wilderness, on its beaches. And when I say connecting with nature, Julian actually, like, literally, if he sees an animal, like an Australian animal, he'll go out and grab it, right? Like, and he'll touch it, he'll grab it, and he'll want to inspect it and understand it. And that's his way of reconnecting with nature. It's not like looking through binoculars at birds or anything like that. He wants to go and grab a hold of it, and like hold on to it and feel it, and be a part of it. So yeah, he's really enjoying doing all that. I mean, he always sends me these videos of, like, oh, here's this snake that's crawled into the house, or check out this lizard that we found. And so yeah, he's having a good time. He's learning how to fish. He's become a bit of a fisherman. Um, and teaching his kids how to do that as well, teaching his kids how to fish. So I feel a bit sorry for all the fish out there, now that Julian Assange is out of jail and coming after them. But yeah, he's doing really well, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with him. I'll take my daughter with me, up to see him. And yeah, we'll have some family time with my nephews and his wife Stella and my dad, and our sister as well. So yeah, it's really special. It's a special time. It's summer in Australia, so it's sort of our vacation time when we can take a week to all spend some time together, and that's really really special. And I think it helps Julian as well, um, coming
Well, that's
off a bit of
great.
a
I see he's also weighing in on the Nobel Prize, and so he's getting back into um, public, public discourse a little bit. Maybe just putting his toe in the water, which is great. So,
yeah. And I think he's going to do more next year. So he does have he is still working and still thinking about how he can engage and change things like with this Nobel Prize, particularly around what was going on in Venezuela. And so I guess you saw as well that Julian's lawyer, Barry Pollock, in Washington, D.C., is actually Maduro's lawyer as well.
Yes, yes, I did
Uh,
see that.
so there are ways that he is engaging back in the world, and I think we're going to see more and more of that in the new year. So yeah, that's it's very special to watch Julian, getting back involved in the ways that he can and make an impact.
well, so and it's interesting. He's back in Australia. Can't come to the United States yet, or maybe never. Um, And yet, what we're seeing in Australia right now is this incredible crackdown on free speech, and under the guise of anti-Semitism and hate crimes, there's a new bill that's I think going to be brought up in Parliament in 3 days. It was just released yesterday. Criminalizes lots of different expressions, even ex post facto. Seems to have a carve out for certain religious groups, maybe, or for certain religious expressions, but not others. And so it seems very problematic. What triggered that? And again, is it just that thing that you talked about before, that these governments are weak and they're concerned about media? And how does that impact, someone like you who's working for free speech, or your brother who's, obviously working on free speech through a different angle, through speaking freely? Do you see that as a threat that's a showstopper, or do you think that that bill doesn't pass? What's your view on that?
Well, it's very early days on that bill. I was just reading through some of the language this morning, and it's. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. There's parts of it that say like, oh, the government can declare you like not fit. They can sort of ban you and imprison you, and there's actually no room for any sort of litigation or due process around those. It just comes directly from the minister in charge, so directly from an elected official, that these sort of things can happen to you. So it's sort of similar to what we're seeing in the United Kingdom around Palestine Action, that group. I think we're going to see similar things starting to happen here in Australia, and I think it's related to this. It is related to the loss of narrative control, particularly the loss of narrative control around what's going on in the Middle East. And so uh, there's a real clampdown, a real effort to put more laws in place that entrench traditional media control. And that's what this is. And we've seen in Australia, particularly, a really ramping up of that. We've had a social media ban for young people, so young people are now unable to access any information on social media. Anyone under the age of 16 here in Australia is not able to access information on social media. So we're actually denying our young people here in Australia access to YouTube, access to TikTok, access to Twitter, where there is a wealth of information out there, wealth of educational information, as well as ways to understand our world, and we're denying that to our most active minds. And so that's a very concerning thing happening here in Australia as well. And it and
Also, you
it
have to show ID even if you're not 16, right? So now
yeah,
you've
and there's
identified yourself.
privacy implications. There's privacy implications as well for people over the age of 16. But I think my concern really is like, why would you deny these people, these 16-year-olds, the ability to teach themselves, to educate themselves, and entrench what they're learning from these traditional media platforms that we know are obsolete and are becoming extinct. So it's really a concern for the future generations of Australia, of Australians, and what they're actually going to know, and what our society is going to know, and how we're going to be able to make decisions in our own interest if we're denying these tools to our young people. So I think there is very, very deep implications for our society, not just our privacy, but for these people who, these 16-year-olds who will be voting in 2 years' time, they can't actually access information about who they're voting for. They have to consume it from a Murdoch newspaper. That's the only avenues that are allowed left to them. So I think that there's very, very concerning implications for our society, and I think it's part of it is a reaction to what we've seen coming out of Gaza, the information, the videos that have been to us from Gaza, and how they're impacting young people, and how young people are understanding what's going on in the world through these internet platforms. And these new laws coming in are actually a reaction to a shooting. We had a mass shooting event
Yeah.
here in Australia that was um, predominantly Jewish people being killed by some Islamic extremists at Bondi Beach last December, and this is a reaction to that, where there's this conflation that I guess you see going along around the world. Actually, this conflation of criticism of the state of Israel and anti-Semitism, and so it's a continuation of that through and codifying of that through these laws that have been presented to Parliament.
Well, oddly, in the bill that's there, at least my understanding of it, you can still preach, extreme Islam, but if you call out extreme Islam, you might be prosecuted for being a hate criminal. So it's a strange law that has a lot of weird loopholes in it. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but the ability at a sweep to criminalize speech is pretty breathtaking. It must be. I mean, I don't know if it's a template. And you mentioned earlier, why is it that politicians don't feel the ability to persuade if they have a position? I mean, even in our country, Franklin Roosevelt was a hugely powerful politician, but he was persuading all of the time and really aggressively persuading for his positions and his policies. And he had to fight hard to get them. He wasn't criminalizing people who didn't agree with him. And as I say, he was extremely popular, extremely powerful. Why aren't there politicians like that anymore? Why are they pulling on this lever? It doesn't really make a lot of sense unless maybe their policies are not defensible.
Yeah, or they just have shit ideas. Like that's I think that's what it comes down to. Like their ideas are bad, and they know that they don't benefit the majority of their
They
constituency.
benefit the donors, their donors.
Yeah,
The donors
and
or
so
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, and so then that's it's pretty obvious to me. Like if they had good ideas, then they'd be out there like telling everybody about them. But yeah, they don't have ideas that benefit the actual constituents, like the people who are suffering. Um, it benefits donor class or lobbying class or these sort of uh, select classes of people. And you're right about this law. I mean, I haven't been able to read a lot about it. I was talking with my team before I got on this on your show about how we're going to actually push back against it, how we're going to activate it.
Yeah. Well, Gabe, we really appreciate you coming on. I know we're near the end. If you have a minute, could I ask you real quick about, you mentioned the Bondi Beach shooting. I know there was some confusion. Pat and I were talking about this earlier, um, because my recollection is there was a mass shooting in Australia, and I won't know the year, but it was quite a while ago, and the reaction to it was so shocking that they passed very strict bans on firearms in Australia. So I know Pat and I were just confused as to how this occurred and how someone was able to get their hands on weapons to kill all those people in Bondi Beach. And
Yeah, it's a huge failing of our intelligence agencies here in Australia. These two, the father and son who perpetrated this crime, were actually known to intelligence services, and they were allowed to accumulate these weapons. They were given license. They were given gun licenses. These are licensed weapons. We have laws in Australia that automatic weapons are not available for purchase. So these are all bolt action rifles, limited number of bullets in the magazine. So they were using these bolt action rifles in this massacre, and they were allowed to accumulate these weapons, even though that they were known to our intelligence services here in Australia. So I think it's a huge intelligence failing, that huge failing of these intelligence services that these guys were actually allowed to do what they did, especially when they were already on. They've already been on lists. They were allowed to travel to the Philippines and do all these different things. It's pretty incredible that they were not apprehended in advance. But also on the flip side, we have a lot of people returning from the Middle East who have fought for the IDF, as well as other extremist groups in the Middle Islamic extremist groups returning to Australia, that are being monitored by our intelligence services. So it's very strange that these guys slipped through the cracks. But they were bolt action rifles, Leonard. They weren't semi-automatic or automatic rifles that they were using. So
It is weird. Such an unfortunate coincidence that there was this huge intelligence failure, and now this 3 weeks later, a draconian law to arrest anybody who says certain words. But it's just a coincidence. I'm sure there's no connection between those two events. Um,
well, I mean, people were still mourning uh, when the right, or the right in Australia, people were still mourning when the right of Australia were using this to push through these limitations on speech. So it's really been grabbed hold of by these political factions here in Australia, and exploited to push through these types of limitations and consequences on people exercising their free speech. And a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are very afraid that things they've said, criticisms they've made of what's going on in Gaza, are now going to affect their ability to live their lives here in Australia.
yes, because there's a provision that it's an ex post facto law. I don't know if it's in our constitution. You can't do that. I don't know how it works in Australia, but that an utterance that you made 2 weeks ago could become a criminal act next week, even though it was not a criminal act when you said it. So strange times, and I'm really glad that you're here to help, and that you've built this network. I think we always do look for the uplifting part of the story, and it seems like what you're doing is fantastic, and we hope to hear more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
well, thanks for coming on, Gabe, and for your time, and it was really a pleasure.
Yeah, you too, and keep up the good work on your end as well.
You too.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. Talk to you.
That's Julian.